Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I've Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And welcome to another sub segment, Fictional Women Around the World. Today we are talking about Carmen Sandiego. There are going to be some spoilers because there is a new show on Netflix.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Did I know this?
It's a new animated show. Carmen Sandiego is voiced by Gina Rodriguez. But I'm not going to go too much into that because the lore is deep, my friends. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty new. So, and a lot of, I just saw like, wow, the canon is changing so rapidly in Carmen Sandiego. But I will talk about it a little bit. What is your experience with Carmen Sandiego, Samantha?
Oh, I grew up in the generation of PBS. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? I was just talking about the fact that TikTok had a video of the Rockapellas doing the outro song at the end. It's so good. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Anyway,
Catchy.
All of that to say, yes. And I remember so well, I think she was a cartoon. They never actually had a character of her. You just had to find her, and the kids would find her and get a prize. It was one of my watches for a little while. It's so vague. It's right there with Captain Kangaroo. Don't worry about me. Like in that vagueness, as well as Ghost Rider. It was Ghost Rider and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. Those are the ones that I remember the most, but I still don't remember. But man, it was something.
It was something.
I don't know any lore about her. I just know the game show.
Oh, you're going to learn.
I'm excited.
This was a fun one. I've never really watched the show. Spoiler alert, not really, because it's from the 80s. She actually started as a video game character. I didn't know that. I didn't play any of the games, but I would have loved them.
I remember playing on the computer. She was a geography game, and I played that as well. I think it was in the third grade. Look, it was good. It was good segment.
Oh my gosh, I would have loved it. I would have loved it. But I think Osmosis, she was just so popular that I somehow knew about her. Like I knew the song. I knew how she looked.
Gay queer lore for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that coming on later, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
I will say I have several friends who dress as Carmen Sandiego for like Halloween, and
love it.
A lot of them are queer. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it is something that I've noted in the past.
I just remember that being a thing much later. And this was my childhood, so.
Well, oh my gosh, this was such a fun one. And actually, I'm going to call it out later, but there is a great article you can read about how much this meant to teachers, especially when it came out in the 80s. So, yes. Carmen Sandiego. The character Carmen Sandiego was first introduced in 1985 and the first of what would grow to become 22 video games and later 3 TV shows, some of them Emmy-winning, multiple board games, books, and comics. And in 2019, Netflix debuted a new series focused on Carmen Sandiego. There are classroom resources, books, games that you can use in class. There's a whole website, carmensandiego.com. You can look up more about this. Her story has recently gone through some retconning, so please feel free to write in if I make a mistake. I would actually love to hear about it. I know one of our listeners has written about this.
Okay. So, on top of it. I love it.
Yes. Okay. Looking at the game, in 1983, game programmer Dane Bigham started work on what would eventually become the video game Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. In these early stages, it was really just a framework. It was a graphic-based game for kids. That was like literally all they knew what they wanted. Eventually, he and his team settled on cops and robbers as a theme because they wanted to differentiate themselves from like a dungeon-based game that was really common at the time. So this would have you would have a clear objective instead of like wandering around a dungeon and maybe not knowing what you're doing. Bingham's boss came up with the idea to include a hard copy of the World Almanac and Book of Facts with the game. This was new. This was like a new thing. This edition also spurred on the idea that the game could add elements of the almanac into it. And this led to the international bit. But the programmers wanted to avoid the educational label because those types of games were not great at the time. They weren't cool. So they were like, how do we add in this almanac but not make it too educational? Right. Or at least on the front of it, it doesn't look like that. And a lot of these games at the time relied on blocks of text, like a digital version of a choose your own adventure game. So like, do you go this way or do you go that way? Which wasn't always the clearest for kids. So this game added images to make it more accessible, along with multiple choices of options. So if you haven't seen it and you're a nerd like me, I really recommend looking it up. But it's essentially like a picture of somewhere in a different country, like in Prague, and it'll say like, you find a clue, it's a red whatever for whatever, and it gives you 4 like multiple choice, like, I searched this, I talked to this person, I do like all of these things. I would have loved it. I tell you, I would have ate this up. In the game, Carmen Sandiego is your main nemesis. She was the leader of the Villains International League of Evil, or VILE. She and her crew would steal famous works of art or landmarks. The player, who worked for Interpol and later something else, but Interpol at first. Oh, Acme, would use the almanac to interpret clues to figure out where is Carmen Sandiego. Basically, plot-wise, the player would investigate thefts around the world, find clues that would lead them to the criminals' next target until they caught the criminals. Although you could make a mistake and then you would have to backtrack and you would lose time. So there's a time element as well. As the player catches her henchman, Carmen, though, she ducks, she eludes. Her wit and ability to evade capture made her something of an anti-hero to girls and Latina folks at the time. And in the writing process, she went from a minor character to the mastermind. Her character was portrayed as a thief with a heart, or a thief who wanted a challenge but wouldn't hurt anyone. She's more of a prankster than a criminal, and that was a deliberate choice that they made. And you know I love this. Her henchmen had pun names like Can Hardly Read and Polyester Fabric. I almost just read a whole list of them. They're so good. It first came out on a floppy disk. Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure I played that. Don't sorry.
It took a minute, but sales really took off in 1986. It was popular in burgeoning school computer labs. So this is around the time when schools were starting to get those. And here comes this game that you could use in those computer labs. Within a decade, it had sold 4 million copies. And it led to so many other games, some of them very specific, like where in time is Carmen Sandiego? Where in North Dakota is Carmen Sandiego? Now, that one is the one that I mentioned. You can find a really long article about how it got made. So essentially, teachers in North Dakota were like, this game is great. We love this. What if we could make it North Dakota based? They also loved that it wasn't so male and boy focused. The reward for success wasn't a princess or anything like that. They loved that. And so they kind of came together. They wrote to the creators, and these teachers came together like, we love this. We love using it in classrooms. We make lesson plans around it. Can we make this work in North Dakota? And the teachers pretty much did it. Like, they came up with all this trivia and worked on it and made it happen. And I believe there was a recent kind of exhibit of it, and students who had played it came in or like, I remember loving this game and like I have such fond memories of it. It's a great article. I highly recommend looking it up because it's really fun to hear how they work together to make it happen. The live TV show that you mentioned, Samantha, on PBS ran from 1991 to 1995. And then, yes, in 2019, the Netflix series came out. And in this, Carmen was born in Buenos Aires, where she went to study to be a criminal at the Vile Academy for Criminals. Actually, well, I think this is a retcon. Recently, it was revealed she was kidnapped.
Oh.
And that's why she was at Vile Academy for Criminals. But anyway, during her time there, she eventually decided to become a force for good and now fights against her old classmates. She is an expert in stealth, an excellent problem solver, proficient at gadgets, and a pro at disguise. I would say in the Netflix show, she's more of a Robin Hood figure, like steals from bad people and gives it to good people, I suppose.
Huh.
She has her typical spy skills, but like really talented. She doesn't know or doesn't reveal her birth name. She goes by codename Black Sheep. Her father was assassinated trying to protect her as a baby, and she was taken to Vile. And she loses her memories, gets them back. That's a whole thing. And it is, I think it's in season 4. So it's been around. And a lot of the reviews I read of it really enjoyed it. I believe it was listener Taylor wrote in and said that it was pretty good, except for like some of the more recent episodes. But people do seem to be enjoying it. And I think like this character has brought a lot of joy. I think a lot of people have these fond memories of playing the game or watching the show or what have you. But like you would open it was really fun reading. One of the creators was like, yeah, people like being right. So, you'd open the almanac and you'd be like searching what the right answer is to where is Carmen Sandiego. But people were kind of learning through this what they wanted to be or not. I think they said the kids were more likely to use the almanac. The adults were more likely to just guess. Anyway, there's been a lot written about it. I think it's really fun and really cool. I'm fascinated by the fact she's had this lasting impact, but I think people do like a character like that. She was just fun.
Yeah.
She always like managed to escape you, but she was kind of more of a prankster than a villain. Yeah, she's a really fun character. And I did find a lot of stories of kids of all backgrounds and genders having really fond memories of her, of thinking she represented how powerful leaders women could be, how smart. I think Gina Rodriguez has a really good story about this where she's talking to her nephew. And I don't know how it came up, but she was kind of saying, yeah, women, unfortunately, you often don't have the same power or like whatever. And her nephew was like, but in Carmen Sandiego, she's the leader. She's the head. She's like, just like believing, well, but here I see.
Right.
And I believe in the show, the Netflix show, most of the white male characters that are working with Interpol are kind of portrayed as like, they don't take Carmen Sandiego seriously, and that is their downfall. That is their downfall. Oh. I had a great time researching this one.
I love Carmen Sandiego. I really did. She was one of those that I remember growing up being like, this is a really fun game. There's nothing concerning. There was nothing problematic about it. And I was like, yeah. Then the kids were doing the show. And yeah, I think we competed for computer time to get to play this game. I did not look up almanacs. I was just right.
You just knew.
I just knew. Would I know it now? Hell no.
Listen, listeners, look it up. But it is fun. Like, I was getting into it just looking at screenshots. I was like, oh, yeah, where is that?
It really was a whole thing. I can't even remember. And I'm not going to tell you, like, if I remember anything about the game. I just know I played it, and I just know I loved it. I remember Peggy Carter's outfit was so reminiscent of Carmen Sandiego. I didn't know if that was on purpose.
Mm.
Because she is a spy as well, and she travels the world, and she's one of the few women that do it. Like, so in my head, they could have been parallel, but obviously not. One's Latina and the other's not. So,
right.
But she had brown hair. You know, people do things. Anyway, but yeah, it was so significant that that's who I thought maybe they had modeled. I didn't realize Marvel. I was like, oh, duh, they would never. But they were so similar in like the hats and the clothes, and I was like, huh.
Yeah. Yeah, and a bunch of people did bring up, like, her style was on point.
Oh, yeah. Even tools today, still on point.
Yes. Yeah. And there are people still writing about this. I found very in-depth studies that I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Studying the music. Okay. All right. I love it.
Music. I'm telling you that I remember it clearly.
Mm-hmm. I do too. And like I said, to my knowledge, I didn't even watch it. I didn't play the game, but it got to me even so as a kid. But yes, listeners, we would love to hear from you. If you have fond memories of this or just memories at all, if you played the game, watched the show, you can email us at stephaniemomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff I Never Told You. We're also on YouTube. We have a TeePublic store, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks, as always, to our super producer, Christina, executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.